The stars had always called to humanity. For thousands of years, they looked up at the night sky and wondered what secrets waited among those distant lights. When they finally reached beyond their own world, they found something unexpected. They found they were not alone. The Galactic Alliance had existed for over 50,000 years. It was a union of 7 powerful species who had conquered the challenges of space travel and built an empire that stretched across 300 star systems. The tall beings with silver skin and 4 arms led the council. The swarm moved as one mind across their hive worlds. The ancient and wise had mapped the stars before any other species drew breath. They traded in secrets and technology. They built ships that could cross galaxies. The warriors enforced the Alliance's laws, and the beings of pure energy observed everything with cold calculation. When humanity's first exploration vessel crossed into Alliance space, it caused quite a stir. The ship was small. It moved slowly. Its weapons were primitive. The crew of 47 humans stared in wonder at the massive cruiser that surrounded their tiny vessel. Admiral of the fleet had seen many young species before. Most of them begged. Some of them fought and died quickly. A few were wise enough to submit and join the great family of the Alliance. As he watched the human ship through his viewing screen, he expected the same. But something was different about these creatures. Captain stood on the bridge of the Pathfinder. Her heart beat fast in her chest, but her face showed nothing. Around her, her crew watched the alien vessel with a mix of fear and excitement. They had trained for this moment their entire lives. First contact, the dream of every explorer who had ever lived. "Open a channel," she said, her voice steady. The communication officer, a young man named, worked his controls with shaking hands. "Channel open, Captain." Stepped forward. She straightened her uniform. She thought about all the people back on Earth who were counting on her. Billions of souls who had no idea that humanity's future was about to be decided in the next few minutes. "This is Captain of the Earth vessel Pathfinder. We come in peace. We seek friendship and knowledge." The response came after a long pause. The translator software struggled with the alien language, but eventually words formed on the screen. "You have entered Alliance space. Your vessel will follow us. Your species will be evaluated. Resistance is not recommended." Looked at her crew. She saw the fear in their eyes, but she also saw something else. Determination. Pride. These were the sons and daughters of a species that had survived ice ages, wars, plagues, and their own foolishness. They would not bow easily. "We will follow," replied. "But know this, we do not submit, we negotiate." 3 months later, humanity officially joined the Galactic Alliance. The terms were not kind. Humanity was classified as a level 3 species. This meant they were considered primitive, useful only for basic labor and minor services. They were forbidden from developing weapons beyond what the Alliance approved. They could not expand beyond the 12 systems granted to them. They had to pay tribute in resources and labor to the elder races. The human delegation protested. They argued. They pointed out that their species had achieved space travel independently. They had split the atom. They had unlocked the secrets of their own genetics. They deserved respect. The council listened politely. Then they every request. "You are young," the ambassador said, his 4 hands spreading wide in what might have been a gesture of sympathy. "In time, you will understand. The universe is not kind to those who reach too high too quickly. We protect you from yourselves." For 50 years, humanity lived under these rules. They built colonies on the 12 worlds they were permitted. They sent their workers to toil in Alliance mines and factories. They paid their tribute without fail. They smiled at their masters and said the words they were expected to say. But in the darkness of their ships and the privacy of their homes, they whispered different words. They remembered who they were. Commander James stood at the window of the human embassy on Prime. The alien city stretched below him, towers of crystal and light reaching toward the purple sky. Beautiful, ancient, a reminder of everything humanity was not allowed to be. "They think we're cattle," he said quietly. Behind him, Admiral Sarah set down her drink. She was old now, her hair gray and her body tired from years of service. But her eyes still burned with the fire that had made her the most respected officer in the human fleet. "They think we're children," she corrected. "Cattle don't need to be controlled. Children do." "Is there a difference?" "Yes, cattle accept their fate. Children grow up." James turned from the window. "The Council rejected our petition again. They won't let us expand to the Outer Rim systems. They won't let us build new shipyards. They won't even let us develop better medical technology without their approval." "I know. How much longer do we accept this?" Sarah was quiet for a long moment. Then she reached into her pocket and pulled out a small data chip. She handed it to James. "Do you know what this is?" James examined the chip. It looked ordinary. "No." "It's hope." Sarah sat down heavily in her chair. 15 years ago, I authorized a secret project, off the books, hidden from Alliance sensors. We call it Project Phoenix. James felt his pulse quicken. "What kind of project?" "The kind that could get us all executed if the Council found out." Sarah smiled, and for a moment she looked young again. "We've been building a fleet, James. A real fleet, not the garbage the Alliance allows us to have. Ships with weapons and engines and shields that would make the admirals weep with fear." "Where? How?" "The Alliance monitors everything." "Not everything. There are places even they haven't mapped. Dark regions where sensors don't work. We found one. A system surrounded by radiation clouds and gravitational anomalies. We call it Haven." James stared at her. His mind raced with possibilities. "How many ships?" 300 so far, and growing every day." "That's not enough. The Alliance has thousands." "I know, but it's a start." Sarah leaned forward. "James, I'm old. I won't live to see the end of this, but you will. I'm passing Project Phoenix to you. Continue the work, build the fleet, and when the time is right, make them remember what humanity can do." The next day, Admiral Sarah died in her sleep. The official report said it was natural causes. James suspected the Alliance had discovered something. He never found proof. He took command of Project Phoenix. For 20 more years, humanity played its role. They smiled at their masters. They bowed when required. They sent their young to work in Alliance factories and serve on Alliance vessels. They paid their tribute and never complained. Meanwhile, in the darkness of Haven, the fleet grew. Ships rolled off the assembly lines. Engineers worked through the night, driven by a dream they could barely articulate. Scientists pushed the boundaries of physics, chemistry, and biology. Soldiers trained in secret facilities, preparing for a war that might never come. James grew old watching the fleet expand. 300 ships became 500. 500 became 800. The original designs, based on stolen Alliance technology, evolved into something new, something human. The Phoenix-class battleships were monsters of steel and fire. Each one carried enough weapons to reduce a moon to rubble. Their engines burned with technology that the Alliance had never seen. Their shields could withstand bombardments that would vaporize cruisers. And the crews were special. Unlike the Alliance species who relied on automation and drones, humans insisted on filling their ships with living souls. Each vessel carried thousands of crew members. Engineers, pilots, soldiers, medics, cooks, and cleaners. People with families waiting for them. People who knew exactly why they were fighting. James stood on the bridge of the Phoenix Rising, the flagship of the Hidden Fleet. He was 80 years old now. His body was failing, but his mind remained sharp. "Status report," he said. His first officer, a young woman named, checked her displays. "All systems operational, Admiral. The fleet is at full readiness." "How many ships now?" 973, sir. With the new construction bays online, We'll hit 1,000 within 6 months. 1,000 warships. James could hardly believe it. In 70 years, humanity had gone from a single primitive exploration vessel to a force that could challenge the galaxy. But they weren't ready. Not yet. The Alliance still had more ships, more resources, more experience. A direct confrontation would be suicide. "We need more time," James said, mostly to himself. "Sir, there's something else." His voice was hesitant. "We've received word from our contacts in the Alliance. Something is happening." "What kind of something?" "The swarm. They're moving against one of our colony worlds, Epsilon 7. James felt his blood turn cold. Epsilon 7 was a mining colony. 30,000 humans lived there, workers and their families, children. "Why, we've paid our tribute. We've followed every rule." "Apparently not well enough. The claim we've been withholding rare minerals. They're demanding the colony be dissolved and the population transferred to labor camps." "That's a death sentence. The camps have a survival rate of less than 5%. "Yes, sir." James gripped the railing of his command platform. His knuckles turned white. All around him, his crew watched in silence, waiting for his decision. For 70 years, humanity had waited. They had built their fleet in secret. They had prepared for a war that might never come. And now, the moment of truth had arrived. But they still weren't ready. They had 973 ships. The Alliance had over 10,000. The math didn't work. "How long until they reach Epsilon 7? "3 weeks, sir." 3 weeks. Not enough time to build more ships. Not enough time to recruit more crews. Not enough time to finish the preparations they had been making for 70 years. James closed his eyes. He thought about Sarah and her dying wish. He thought about Captain and her brave words so long ago. He thought about the billions of humans scattered across 12 worlds, living under the boot of species who considered them nothing more than useful animals. He thought about the 30,000 souls on Epsilon 7 who were about to die. "No," he said. "Looked up, sir. No, we don't abandon our people, not ever. Admiral, if we reveal the fleet now." "I know the risks." James opened his eyes. They were filled with a fire that belied his age. "Contact all ship commanders. Emergency assembly. We move in 48 hours." The message went out across Haven. 973 ships powered up their engines. Crews rushed to their stations. Engineers made final checks on weapons and shields. In mess halls and barracks, soldiers embraced their friends and whispered prayers to whatever gods they believed in. The time for hiding was over. But James knew they couldn't just charge into Alliance space with guns blazing. They would be destroyed. They needed a plan. They needed leverage. He called a meeting of his senior officers. "The Alliance thinks we're weak," he said, standing before a holographic map of the galaxy. "They think we're cattle who have accepted our place. We're going to use that." Admiral Sung Ho, commander of the 3rd Fleet Division, leaned forward. "How?" "We're going to make them an offer they can't refuse. But first, we're going to show them what happens when they threaten our people." The plan was simple in concept, terrifying in execution. The human fleet would split into 4 groups. 3 groups would position themselves at key points throughout Alliance space, hidden behind moons and asteroids, invisible to sensors. The 4th group, led by James himself, would escort a diplomatic vessel to Prime. "You're going to negotiate?" asked incredulous. "I'm going to deliver a message." James smiled, and it was not a friendly expression. "The Alliance needs to understand something. We are not their servants. We are not their children. We are humanity, and we will burn the stars themselves before we let them harm our people." 2 days later, the fleet moved. The journey to Prime took 3 weeks. During that time, they continued their approach to Epsilon 7. The colonists there knew what was coming. They sent desperate messages to Earth, to the other colonies, to anyone who might listen. No one answered. The Alliance Council received word that a human diplomatic vessel was approaching, escorted by what appeared to be a small security fleet. They were not concerned. Humans often sent delegations to complain about their treatment. It was tiresome but harmless. Ambassador of the agreed to receive the human representative. It would give him a chance to explain, once again, why humanity's place in the galaxy was fixed and unchangeable. He expected a humble diplomat carrying gifts and apologies. He got something very different. The human fleet dropped out of hyperspace above Prime, 100 ships arranged in a perfect formation. They were large, they were heavily armed, and they were broadcasting a signal on all frequencies. This is Fleet Admiral James of the United Human Navy. I come bearing a message for the Galactic Alliance Council. I request an immediate audience. Ambassador stared at his screen in shock. 100 human warships. Where had they come from? How had they been built? The Alliance had been monitoring human space for decades. They had never seen anything like this. Impossible, he whispered. His aide, a young named, was already working the communications panel. Ambassador, our sensors are going crazy. These ships, their weapons output is off the charts. Their shields are unlike anything in our database. It's a trick, it must be. Sir, we're receiving reports from across Alliance space. Human ships have appeared at Prime at the Fortress system. Hundreds of ships, maybe more. His 4 hands trembled. In all his centuries of life, he had never felt fear like this. The humans, the weak, primitive, obedient humans, what had they done? The answer came 30 minutes later, when Fleet Admiral was escorted into the council chamber. James walked slowly, supported by a cane. He was old and tired, and his body ached with every step, but his eyes were steady and his voice was strong. The 7 species of the Alliance Council watched him approach. They sat in their ornate chairs. The representatives clicked their mandibles nervously. They closed their ancient eyes and whispered among themselves. They took notes with their many fingers. The builders examined him with professional interest. The warriors gripped their ceremonial weapons, and those beings of pure energy flickered with patterns no organic mind could interpret. James stopped in the center of the chamber. He looked around at the faces of the beings who had controlled his species for 70 years. He remembered every insult, every restriction, every human who had died in Alliance labor camps or been executed for crimes against the Council. Honored members of the Galactic Alliance, he said, his voice echoing through the vast chamber. I come to you today with a simple message. High Counselor, the same who had welcomed humanity into the Alliance so many decades ago, leaned forward. Admiral, this demonstration is inappropriate. The Alliance does not respond to threats. Your ships will be destroyed if you do not. With respect, High Counselor, I have not finished speaking. The chamber fell silent. No one had ever interrupted a High Counselor before. James continued. 70 years ago, my species joined your alliance. We came in peace. We came seeking knowledge and friendship. We were told that we were children who needed to be guided. We were told that our place was to serve. We were told that in time we would understand. He paused, letting his words sink in. We understand now. James raised his hand. A holographic display activated behind him, showing the disposition of the human fleet. 100 ships at Prime, 200 ships at Prime, 200 ships at the, 300 ships at the Fortress, and 173 ships scattered throughout Alliance space, each one positioned near a critical military or economic target. 973 warships, James said, each one carrying weapons that your sensors cannot fully analyze, each one crewed by humans who have trained their entire lives for this moment, each one ready to fight and die for the freedom of our species. The representative surged to its feet. This is madness. You cannot threaten the Alliance. We will crush you. Perhaps you have more ships than we do, more experience, More resources, James smiled. But consider this. Right now, a fleet is approaching one of our colonies. 30,000 human lives hang in the balance. If that fleet does not turn around within the next 12 hours, I will order my ships to open fire on every target in Alliance space simultaneously. The chamber erupted in chaos. Representatives shouted at each other. Guards moved toward James, only to be stopped by a sharp command from the High Counselor. "You would start a war you cannot win," demanded. "I would rather die free than live as a slave." James's voice was calm. "And so would every human in this galaxy. You spent 70 years trying to break us. You failed. We are not cattle. We are not children. We are the species that looked up at the stars and refused to be afraid. We are the species that conquered our own world and reached for the heavens. We are humanity, and we bow to no one." The silence that followed was absolute. High Counselor stared at the old human standing before him. He saw the determination in those eyes, the willingness to die, the utter absence of fear. In 50,000 years of Alliance history, no species had ever stood up to the Council like this. They had all eventually submitted. They had all recognized the inevitable. But humans, it seemed, did not believe in the inevitable. "What do you want?" asked finally. "Freedom, true freedom. We will no longer be classified as a level 3 species. We will no longer pay tribute. We will no longer be restricted in our expansion or development. We will deal with the Alliance as equals, or we will not deal with you at all. And if we refuse?" James looked at the holographic display behind him. 973 ships, positioned to cause unimaginable damage. "Then we all burn together." The Council deliberated for 6 hours. During that time, the human fleet remained in position. On Epsilon 7, the colonists watched their sensors and prayed. In Haven, the engineers and workers who had built the fleet in secret waited for news. And across the galaxy, billions of humans held their breath. When the Council finally announced their decision, it sent shockwaves through known space. The fleet was ordered to turn back. Epsilon 7 would remain a human colony. All restrictions on human development and expansion were lifted. Humanity was elevated to level 1 status, equal to the founding species of the Alliance. But there was a condition. "You will leave," High Counselor said. "The Alliance and humanity will go their separate ways. You will not be permitted in Alliance space. We will not enter your territory. There will be no war, but there will be no peace. Only silence." James considered the offer. It was not what he had hoped for. He had dreamed of true integration, of humanity taking its rightful place among the stars alongside other species. But perhaps that dream had always been impossible. Perhaps some wounds were too deep to heal. "We accept," he said. 1 week later, the human fleet from Alliance space. The ships returned to Haven, where they were greeted as heroes. The colonists on Epsilon 7 celebrated their survival, and across the 12 worlds, humans looked up at the stars with new eyes. They were free. James did not live to see the full consequences of what he had done. He died 6 months later, surrounded by his family and the officers who had served with him. His last words were simple: "Don't forget who you are." The years that followed were years of growth. Humanity spread across the outer rim, claiming systems that the Alliance had ignored. They built colonies and space stations. They developed technologies that pushed the boundaries of what was possible. They created art and music and literature that celebrated their journey from a single planet to a galactic civilization. But they never forgot the Alliance. They never forgot the decades of servitude, the labor camps, the restrictions, the arrogance of species who had looked at humanity and seen nothing but tools to be used. And deep in the hearts of every human, a question burned. What would happen when they met the Alliance again? 50 years passed. The human territories had grown to include over 200 star systems. The population had exploded to over 100 billion. The fleet, once a desperate gathering of 900 ships, now numbered in the tens of thousands. And they were no longer hiding. Admiral Maya stood on the bridge of the and most powerful battleship in the human fleet. She was the great-granddaughter of the legendary Sarah, and the fire of her ancestors burned in her blood. "Status report," she said. Her first officer, Commander David, checked his displays. "All systems operational, Admiral. The fleet is assembled and awaiting orders." Maya looked through the viewport at the gathered armada, 1,000 warships, arranged in perfect formation. Each one a monument to human ingenuity and determination. Each one carrying crews who had trained their entire lives for this moment. 50 years ago, James had faced the Alliance with 900 ships and a desperate bluff. Today, Maya commanded 10 times that number, and it was no bluff. "Open a channel to all ships," she said. The communication officer nodded. "Channel open, Admiral." Maya stood straight. She thought about her grandmother who had started Project Phoenix. She thought about James, who had risked everything for freedom. She thought about the billions of humans who had lived and died under Alliance rule. "Attention all vessels. This is Admiral Maya. 50 years ago, our ancestors showed the Alliance what humanity was capable of. They earned our freedom through courage and sacrifice. Today, we honor their memory." She paused, letting her words echo across the fleet. "We have received word that the Alliance is mobilizing for war. They have decided that humanity has grown too powerful. They have decided that the mistake they made 50 years ago must be corrected. They believe they can destroy us before we become a true threat." Her voice hardened. "They are wrong." Across the fleet, crews listened to their admiral's words. They felt pride swelling in their chests. They felt the weight of history pressing down on their shoulders. They felt ready. "Today we do not hide. Today we do not negotiate. Today we show the galaxy what happens when you threaten humanity." Maya raised her fist. "All ships prepare to jump. We're going to war." The fleet vanished into hyperspace, leaving behind only the echo of 1,000 engines burning for battle. The stars had always called to humanity. Now humanity was answering. The Alliance War Council gathered in the ancient chambers of Prime. The 7 species had not assembled like this in over 3,000 years. The last time had been to face the Void Walkers, a race of beings from beyond the galactic rim who had nearly destroyed everything. They had won that war, but barely. Now they faced a new threat, a threat they had created themselves. High Counselor, the current leader of the, studied the holographic display with growing unease. Red dots marked the positions of human fleets throughout the outer rim. There were so many of them, more than the Alliance had anticipated, more than their intelligence reports had suggested. "How did we miss this?" he demanded. Military commander, a warrior covered in ceremonial scars, stepped forward. "The humans were clever. They developed sensor-blocking technology that our probes could not penetrate. They built their ships in hidden facilities. They trained their crews in secret. We knew they were growing, but we did not know the extent." "The extent," repeated, his 4 hands clenched into fists. "Commander, according to these reports, the humans have over 8,000 warships. 8,000. That is nearly equal to our entire combined fleet." "Yes, High Counselor." "In 50 years, they went from 900 ships to 8,000. How is that possible?" The representative, an ancient being named, spoke in a voice like rustling leaves. "Because we underestimated them. We have always underestimated them. We saw their short and assumed they were limited. We saw their emotional nature and assumed they were weak. We saw their primitive technology and assumed they would never catch up." The ancient being's eyes opened, revealing depths of sadness and wisdom. "We were fools." "The past is irrelevant," the delegate clicked. The species had never forgiven humanity for the humiliation they had suffered 50 years ago. What matters is the present. We must crush them before they grow stronger." "And how do you propose we do that?" asked. "Our fleets are scattered across 300 systems. It will take months to assemble a force capable of matching theirs." "We do not need to match them. We need to strike first, destroy their shipyards, eliminate their leadership, break their will to fight." Shook their ancient head. "You still do not understand. The humans are not like us. They do not break. They bend and then they spring back harder than before. Their history is filled with examples. Every time an enemy has tried to destroy them, they have risen from the ashes stronger than ever." "Then what do you suggest?" Before could answer, an alarm echoed through the chamber. The holographic display flickered and changed, showing a new set of data. A human fleet had just appeared at the edge of space. 1,000 warships, burning through the void like stars falling from the sky. Admiral Maya watched the Alliance patrol ships scatter before her fleet. They were small vessels, designed for surveillance and light combat. They had no chance against her battleships, and their commanders knew it. "Do not pursue," she ordered. "Let them run. Let them report what they have seen." Commander raised an eyebrow. "Admiral, those ships will alert the Alliance to our position. They will know exactly where we are." "That is the point." Maya turned from the viewport. "We are not here to hide, Commander. We are here to send a message." The fleet advanced into space like a knife cutting through silk. They did not attack civilian targets. They did not destroy infrastructure. They simply moved forward, unstoppable and inevitable, heading straight for the heart of the Alliance. Reports flooded into the War Council chamber. The humans were coming. They were not stopping. They were not negotiating. They were simply advancing, system by system, forcing Alliance ships to retreat or be destroyed. "They will reach Prime in 6 days at their current speed," Commander reported. "We do not have enough ships in position to stop them." Felt a cold sensation spreading through his chest. Fear. He had not felt fear in centuries. "Contact the other species. Order all available ships to converge on Prime. We will make our stand here." "And if we fail?" "We will not fail." His voice carried more confidence than he felt. "The Alliance has endured for 50,000 years. We will not fall to a species that has been in space for less than 2 centuries. But even as he spoke the words, doubt gnawed at his hearts. The human fleet made camp in the system, 3 days from Prime. Maya called a meeting of her senior commanders. The war room was a vast chamber filled with holographic displays and communication terminals. Representatives from every division of the fleet gathered around the central table, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of tactical data. "Intelligence reports indicate the Alliance is assembling their forces at Prime," Maya began. "They expect us to attack the capital directly. They are preparing their defenses accordingly." Admiral Jackson Torres, commander of the Second Fleet, nodded. "Classic defensive strategy. Concentrate your forces at the most important target and force the enemy to come to you." "Exactly, which is why we are not going to do what they expect." Maya gestured and the holographic display changed. It showed a map of Alliance space with key systems highlighted. The Alliance is not a unified empire. It is a collection of 7 species with different cultures, different priorities, and different interests. The only thing holding them together is mutual benefit. If we remove that benefit, the Alliance will tear itself apart. Commander Wei, head of Special Operations, leaned forward. "You want to break them up?" "I want to give them a choice." Maya pointed to several systems on the map. "They have always been reluctant members of the Alliance. They joined for protection, not power. They have no interest in war with humanity. They are traders. They care about profit, not politics. They are observers. They study. They analyze. They do not fight unless absolutely necessary." "That still leaves the Torres pointed out. "Yes, and they will be our primary targets." Maya's eyes hardened. "But not in the way you might think. We are not here to exterminate anyone. We are here to prove a point. We are here to show the galaxy that humanity is not to be trifled with." She tapped the controls, and the display changed again. This time, it showed detailed schematics of Alliance military installations. "They are warriors. They respect strength. If we defeat them in battle, they will acknowledge our worth. They are builders. They created the technology that powers Alliance ships. If we show them that human technology is superior, their pride will be wounded, but they will adapt. They are hive-minded. They think in terms of the collective. If we demonstrate that war with humanity will cost them more than they can afford, they will calculate that peace is more profitable." Endo asked. Maya was quiet for a moment. "They are the key. They have led the Alliance for 50,000 years. They consider themselves the guardians of galactic civilization. If we humiliate them, if we prove that their leadership has been a failure, the other species will lose faith in them. The Alliance will crumble from within." Tors whistled softly. "That is a hell of a gamble, Admiral." "It is not a gamble, it is a calculated strategy." Maya looked around the room, meeting the eyes of each commander. "We have 8,000 ships. The Alliance has perhaps 10,000. In a straight fight we might win, but the cost would be catastrophic. Billions would die on both sides. Entire worlds would burn. That is not a victory. That is suicide." She straightened. "Our goal is not to destroy the Alliance. Our goal is to reshape it. We want a galaxy where humanity is respected, not feared, where we are partners, not servants. That requires precision, not brutality. And if the Alliance refuses to see reason?" Maya's expression did not change. "Then we will teach them, one lesson at a time." The first lesson came at the fortress world of. There were the Alliance's enforcers. Their warriors were legendary throughout the galaxy. They had fought in thousands of battles over tens of thousands of years. They had never been defeated in a direct confrontation. Admiral Tors led the Second Fleet against 300 human warships against the most heavily fortified military installation in Alliance space. The Commander-General watched the approaching fleet with something approaching amusement. The humans were brave, he would give them that, but bravery alone did not win battles. "All stations prepare for combat," he ordered. "Let us show these younglings what real warriors are capable of." The defense network activated. Thousands of orbital weapons platforms powered up. Hundreds of warships moved into formation. Ground-based artillery systems tracked the incoming human vessels. Expected the humans to hesitate when they saw the strength of his defenses. He expected them to slow down, to probe for weaknesses, to look for an advantage. Instead, they accelerated. The human fleet hit the defenses like a hammer striking glass. Weapons fire lit up the void in brilliant displays of destruction. Ships exploded. Shields failed. Metal twisted and burned. But it was not the ships that were dying. The human warships were faster than anything had ever seen. They dodged fire that should have been unavoidable. They shrugged off hits that should have crippled them. And their weapons watched in horror as a human battleship fired a single shot that punched through 3 of his cruisers before detonating in a cascade of energy that vaporized everything within 1,000 kilometers. "What is that weapon?" he demanded. His aide was pale with shock. "Unknown, General. Our sensors cannot identify the technology." "Then guess." "It appears to be some form of compressed antimatter beam. The yield is. It is impossible. We have never seen anything like it." The battle lasted 3 hours. When it was over, the fortress world was silent, not destroyed, not occupied, just silent. Admiral Tors had stopped the attack the moment the defenses collapsed. He had not landed troops. He had not bombarded civilian areas. He had simply positioned his ships in orbit and waited. General received a message from the human commander. "You fought well. Your warriors are everything the legends claim, but this battle is over. We have no desire to continue the killing. Surrender your fortress and we will withdraw. Your warriors will be allowed to keep their weapons and their honor, refuse, and we will be forced to finish what we started. Stared at the message for a long time. He thought about his warriors, dead and dying throughout the system. He thought about the civilians on the planet below who had watched the battle in terror. He thought about his own honor and what it meant to be a. Then he did something no had done in 10,000 years. He surrendered. News of the battle have spread throughout the galaxy like wildfire. The Invincible had been defeated. Their legendary fortress had fallen, and the humans had not even tried to occupy it. In the halls of the Alliance Council, panic began to set in. "This is impossible," the delegate clicked. "They cannot fall. They are the foundation of our military strength." "They have not fallen," said, though his voice lacked conviction. "They have merely lost a battle." "Lost a battle," the representative laughed, a high-pitched sound that grated on everyone's nerves. "They lost their primary fortress in 3 hours. 3 hours. Their fleet was decimated. Their defensive network was crushed, and the humans barely took any casualties." "That cannot be accurate." "Check the reports yourself, High Counselor." They pulled up the data on the central display. The humans lost 47 ships. They lost 412 ships plus the entire orbital defense grid. That is a kill ratio of nearly 9-to-1. Silence fell over the chamber. The representative spoke softly. "I warned you. I told you we were underestimating them. I told you their nature was not weakness but flexibility. They learn, they adapt, they overcome. It is what makes them dangerous." "Then what do you suggest?" demanded. "Should we simply surrender?" "No, but we should consider the possibility that war is not the answer." Rose from their seat, ancient joints creaking. "The humans did not destroy the fortress. They did not execute prisoners. They did not even occupy the system. They proved their point, and does that sound like a species bent on conquest?" "It sounds like a species playing games." "Perhaps, or perhaps they are trying to tell us something." Moved toward the viewport, looking out at the stars. 50 years ago, they asked for equality. We refused. We drove them away and thought ourselves clever. Now they have returned with the power to take what they want by force. But instead of burning our worlds, they are demonstrating their strength and then stepping back. "What are you saying?" Turn to face the council. "I am saying that the humans do not want war. They want respect. And if we are wise, we will give it to them before they decide that war is the only option left." But wisdom was in short supply among the council members. The second lesson came at the hive world of Prime. They were a collective species. Their society functioned as a single organism, with billions of individuals working in perfect harmony toward common goals. Their ships fought with inhuman precision. Their tactics were calculated to minimize risk and maximize damage. Admiral Maya led the assault herself. "Remember your orders," she told her commanders. "No attacks on civilian infrastructure, no orbital bombardments. We are here to defeat their fleet, not exterminate their population." The commander, a being known simply as Prime 7, watched the human fleet approach. Unlike they felt no emotion about the coming battle. They calculated odds. They assessed variables. They determined optimal strategies. Their calculations told them they would win. They had 4,000 ships defending Prime. The humans had brought only 2,000. The numbers favored the positioning favored the defensive advantages favored the. What the calculations did not account for was chaos. Human tactics were unpredictable. Where ships moved in perfect formation, human ships scattered like leaves in a wind. Where commanders followed optimal patterns, human captains improvised and adapted. Where strategy was logical and consistent, human strategy was creative and constantly changing. Prime 7 found itself unable to predict what the humans would do next. Every time it adjusted its formation, the humans did something unexpected. Every time it thought it had gained an advantage, the humans turned the tables. And then there were the boarding parties. They had not expected the humans to attempt boarding operations during a fleet battle. It was inefficient. It was dangerous. It made no tactical sense. But the humans did it anyway. Small assault craft launched from the human battleships, carrying teams of soldiers in powered armor. They attached to vessels, cut through the hulls, and fought their way inside. Once aboard, they targeted critical systems, engines, weapons, life support. One by one, ships went dark. The battle lasted 7 hours. When it was over, the fleet had been reduced by half, and Prime 7 was forced to accept the unthinkable. "We cannot win this engagement," it reported to the hive mind. "Continued resistance will result in total fleet loss. Recommendation: tactical withdrawal." The hive mind deliberated for 0.3 seconds. Recommendation accepted. All units disengage. The surviving ships fled into hyperspace, leaving Prime undefended. Admiral did not pursue. Instead, she broadcast a message to the planet below. "People of Prime, this is Admiral Maya of the United Human Navy. Your fleet has been defeated, but we have not come to conquer you. We have come to demonstrate a simple truth. War between our species will benefit no one. We ask only for peace and mutual respect. Consider our offer. We will wait for your response." The response came faster than anyone expected. The hive mind was not a single entity. It was the collective will of billions of individuals, all thinking together, all processing the same information. And the information was clear. War with humanity was not profitable. The losses at Prime had been catastrophic. The calculations showed that continued conflict would result in the destruction of the species, not extinction. The humans did not seem interested in genocide, but they would be reduced to a minor power, unable to defend themselves or expand their territory. That was unacceptable. "We propose a cessation of hostilities," Prime 7 transmitted. "The collective withdraws from the Alliance military coalition. We will not oppose human expansion. We ask only that our worlds be left in peace." Maya read the message with a mixture of satisfaction and relief. 2 species down, 5 to go. "Transmit our acceptance," she ordered, "and inform the Council that they are no longer their allies." The third lesson was the hardest. Not because it required military strength, not because it demanded sacrifice, but because it required patience. There were traitors. They had no military to speak of. Their power came from information, from connections, from the ability to make deals that benefited everyone involved. Admiral did not send warships to space. She sent merchants. Human trading vessels appeared at stations, carrying goods the galaxy had never seen before. Advanced medical technology, entertainment systems that made Alliance products look primitive, agricultural techniques that could triple crop yields, manufacturing methods that reduced costs while improving quality. They were intrigued. "What do you want in exchange?" the trade master asked the human representative, a woman named Isabella Santos. "Information," Isabella replied. "Specifically, information about Alliance military movements, strategic resources, and political divisions." The trade master's many eyes narrowed. That would be treason. "It would be business," Isabella smiled. "The Alliance is going to fall. You know it. I know it. The only question is how it falls and who profits from the transition. We are offering you a chance to be on the winning side." The trade master considered the offer. They had no loyalty to the Alliance. They had joined for profit, and they would leave for profit. The only question was whether the humans could deliver on their promises. "Show me proof," the trade master said. "Show me that your technology is real and that your people can be trusted." Isabella nodded. She had expected this. "Of course, we have prepared a demonstration." The demonstration was simple but effective. Human engineers helped them upgrade their primary trading station. Within days, efficiency had improved by 30%. Costs had dropped by half. Profits were soaring. The trade master was impressed. "Very well," they said. "We will provide information, but we will not openly break with the alliance. Not yet." "That is acceptable." Isabella shook hands with the trade master, a gesture she had been told was considered binding among the. "We look forward to a long and profitable relationship." Meanwhile, they made their own decision. The ancient species had watched the progress of the war with growing concern. They had seen the humbled. They had seen the withdraw. They had seen the begin to shift their allegiance. And they had remembered something. Long ago, before the alliance existed, they had been alone in the galaxy. They had watched the stars for billions of years, waiting for other life to emerge. They had been patient. They had been wise. They had understood that the universe was vast and that other species would eventually appear. When they had come, they had welcomed them. When they had emerged, they had offered guidance. They had helped build the alliance because they believed that cooperation was better than conflict. But somewhere along the way, the alliance had become something else. It had become an empire. It had become about control rather than cooperation. It had become about keeping younger species in their place rather than helping them grow. They had gone along with it because change was difficult and because they had hoped things would improve. But things had not improved. The treatment of humanity had shown them that the alliance had lost its way. Now the humans were forcing a change, and they decided it was time to help. "We will not fight for the alliance," announced at the next council meeting. "We will not fight against humanity. We will observe as we have always done, but our days of supporting dominance are over." Stared at the representative. "You would abandon us." "We would free ourselves," met the High Counselor's gaze without flinching. The alliance was supposed to be a partnership of equals. It became a hierarchy with the at the top. That was never what we wanted. Perhaps the humans will help create something better. Those beings of pure energy said nothing, but their flickering patterns grew more complex, more agitated. They were calculating possibilities, analyzing outcomes, determining probabilities. When they finally spoke, their words fell like cold water on the remaining council members. "The collective has completed its analysis. The probability of alliance victory in continued conflict with humanity is 12.7%. The probability of mutual destruction is 34.2%. The probability of human victory is 53.1%. Recommendation: pursue diplomatic solution." "Diplomacy," the representatives slammed their fist on the table. "The humans attacked our allies. They have invaded our space. And you recommend diplomacy?" "Correct. Current trajectory leads to catastrophic outcomes for all species involved. Alternative approaches should be explored." Felt the alliance crumbling around him. They were defeated. They had withdrawn. They were shifting allegiances. They were stepping back. They were recommending surrender. Only they and the remained committed to the fight, and they had just lost their primary fortress. "Very well," said, his voice heavy with something that might have been defeat. "Contact the humans. Tell them we are willing to negotiate." Maya received the message while her fleet was preparing for the final push toward Prime. She read it 3 times to make sure she understood. The Alliance wanted to talk. They wanted to find a peaceful solution. They wanted to avoid further bloodshed. It was everything she had hoped for. But she was not naive. The Alliance had broken promises before. They had made agreements and then found ways to undermine them. They had smiled while sharpening their knives. "What do you think?" she asked her commanders. Admiral Torres shrugged. "Could be a trap, could be genuine, hard to say." "They would never agree to negotiate unless they had truly been defeated," Commander pointed out. "Their honor code forbids false surrenders." "But they are not," added. "They are politicians. They could be stalling for time." Maya nodded. All valid points. She needed more information before making a decision. "Contact our friends," she ordered. "See what they can tell us about Alliance intentions, and keep the fleet ready. If this is a trap, we need to be prepared." They came through, with the intelligence within hours. "The Council is divided," Isabella Santos reported. "They want to negotiate, but they are also preparing a contingency plan. They have been building a secret weapon for the past decade, something called the Stellar Converter." Maya felt ice run down her spine. "What does it do?" "According to our sources, it can destabilize stars, turn them into supernovas. They are threatening to use it against human worlds if the war continues." The room fell silent. A weapon that could destroy stars. A weapon that could wipe out entire solar systems with a single shot. A weapon that could kill billions of innocent people in an instant. This changed everything. "Where is this weapon?" Maya asked. "Unknown. They have kept its location secret even from the other council members. All we know is that it exists and that it is operational." Maya closed her eyes. She thought about the billions of humans living in the territories she was sworn to protect. She thought about the children who had never known war, the families who had built their lives in peace. She thought about what would happen if they decided to use their weapon. She could not allow it. "New orders," she said, her voice hard as steel. "The negotiation offer changes nothing. We will attend the talks, but we will also find that weapon, and when we find it, we will destroy it." The hunt for the Stellar Converter began. The negotiations took place on neutral ground, a space station in the void between, a region of empty space that belonged to no species. Both sides arrived with diplomatic vessels and minimal escort. Both sides claimed to want peace. Both sides were lying. Admiral Maya led the human delegation. She wore her dress uniform, decorated with medals she had never asked for and honors she did not feel she deserved. Behind her stood her most trusted advisors, their faces carefully neutral, their minds racing with calculations and contingencies. High Counselor led the Alliance delegation. His 4 hands were clasped in a gesture of greeting, but his eyes held something cold and calculating. He had ruled for 3 centuries. He had guided the Alliance through countless crises. He would not let it fall to a species of upstart primitives. "Admiral," said, his voice smooth and cultured, "I am pleased that you agreed to meet. War benefits no one. Surely we can find a solution that satisfies both our peoples." Maya nodded politely. "High Counselor, humanity has always preferred peace. We never wanted this conflict. We only wanted to be treated as equals." "And you shall be," spread his hands wide. "The Alliance is prepared to offer humanity full membership with all rights and privileges. You will have seats on the Council. You will have voice in policy. You will be partners in our great galactic civilization." It was everything humanity had asked for 50 years ago, everything they had been, everything they had built their secret fleet to obtain. Maya did not believe a word of it. "That is a generous offer," she said carefully, "but I must ask for clarification. What guarantees can the Alliance provide that these promises will be kept?" His expression did not change. "The word of the High Council should be sufficient. We have governed the galaxy for 50,000 years. Our honor is beyond question." "Forgive me, High Counselor, but history suggests otherwise." Maya kept her voice level, but her eyes were hard. 50 years ago, the Alliance promised to respect humanity's autonomy if we from your space. Within a decade, your agents were conducting espionage operations in our territory. Your ships were testing our borders. Your politicians were speaking publicly about the human problem that needed to be solved. His hands twitched slightly. Those were the actions of individuals, not official policy. Then perhaps official policy needs better enforcement. The negotiations continued for 3 days. Both sides made proposals and counter-proposals. Both sides argued over details and technicalities. Both sides pretended to be making progress while secretly preparing for the moment when talks would break down. Meanwhile, Commander Wei led a special operations team on a very different mission. The stellar converter was hidden somewhere in Alliance space. The had provided clues, but not a precise location. His team had to find it before they decided to use it. They started with They were the builders of the Alliance. Their engineers had designed the ships that conquered the galaxy. Their scientists had unlocked the secrets of hyperspace travel. If anyone knew where it was hidden, it would be them. His team infiltrated a research station in the system. They moved like ghosts through the corridors, avoiding patrols and bypassing security systems. Their target was the central database, where all construction projects were recorded. The database was massive, centuries of engineering knowledge compressed into quantum storage crystals. As technical specialist, a young woman named Lisa Park worked through the data with practiced efficiency. "There is a lot here," she reported. "Ship designs, weapons systems, infrastructure projects, but nothing that matches what we are looking for." "Keep searching," ordered. "They would not have built something like this without help. It has to be here somewhere." Lisa continued her work. Hours passed. The rest of the team maintained their positions, watching for any sign that they had been detected. Finally, Lisa made a small sound of triumph. "Found it, Project Stellar Light. Classified at the highest level. Construction began 40 years ago in a hidden facility in the null zone." Leaned over her shoulder to look at the data. The null zone was a region of space filled with black holes and neutron stars. Sensor equipment did not work there. Navigation was nearly impossible. It was the perfect place to hide something you did not want anyone to find. "Can you get the exact coordinates?" Lisa shook her head. "The location data is stored separately, probably in the central archives on there." Considered their options. Infiltrating Prime would be incredibly difficult. The planet was the most heavily defended world in the galaxy. Security was paranoid and thorough. The chances of success were minimal. But the alternative was allowing a star-destroying weapon to hang over humanity's head forever. "We need to get that data," he said. "Contact Admiral. Tell her we have a lead, but we need support for the next phase." Maya received message during a break in the negotiations. She read it quickly, her expression never changing, and then deleted it from her system. The stellar converter was in the null zone. They knew the general area. Now they needed the exact location. She had to make a decision. Continue the negotiations while her team attempted an incredibly dangerous infiltration of Prime, or find another way to get the information. She chose another way. That evening, she requested a private meeting with the representative. Agreed to meet her in a small observation room at the edge of the station. The ancient being moved slowly, their joints creaking with every step, but their eyes remained sharp and knowing. "Admiral, I wondered when you would seek me out." Maya was surprised. "You expected this." "I expected that you would not trust the promises. You are young, but you are not foolish." Settled into a chair that seemed too small for their frame. "You want to know about the stellar converter." Maya's breath caught. "You know about it." "I know many things. They have watched the galaxy for billions of years. Very little escapes our notice." Eyes grew distant. "The stellar converter is an abomination. It was built against our council. We warned them that such a weapon would only breed fear and hatred. They did not listen." "Do you know where it is?" "Yes," met her gaze. "But I must ask you something first. What will you do with the information?" "I will destroy the weapon." "And if they resist?" Maya was quiet for a moment. "I will do what I must to protect my people." Nodded slowly. "That is the answer I expected, but I must tell you something else, Admiral. The stellar converter is not just a weapon. It is a symbol. They built it because they fear what they cannot control. They fear the younger species who might one day challenge their dominance. They fear the change that progress brings. I understand. Do you? Leaned forward. If you destroy the weapon but leave that fear intact, another weapon will be built. Another crisis will emerge. The cycle will continue forever. What are you suggesting? I am suggesting that you think beyond the immediate threat. The stellar converter must be destroyed, yes, but the alliance must also be transformed. The old ways must give way to something new, something better. Maya absorbed the ancient being's words. She had always known that winning the war was not enough. They had to build a lasting peace, but she had thought that would come after the fighting was done. Now she realized it had to happen at the same time. Will you help me? She asked. Smiled, an expression that looked strange on their ancient face. I have been waiting millions of years for someone to ask that question. Yes, Admiral, I will help. They gave her the coordinates. The stellar converter was located in a station orbiting a dying star deep in the null zone. It was protected by a fleet of automated defense platforms and a skeleton crew of operators. The weapon itself was massive, a cylinder of metal and energy several kilometers long, capable of firing a beam that could destabilize stellar fusion. Maya shared the information with her senior commanders. We cannot bring a large fleet into the null zone, Admiral Torres pointed out. Navigation is too dangerous. We would lose half our ships before we even reached the target. Then we go small, Commander suggested. A surgical strike, a team of specialists to disable the weapon while a small task force handles the defense platforms. They will detect any approach, objected. They will know we are coming. Then we make sure they cannot respond in time. Maya pulled up a tactical display. We launch the strike during the final day of negotiations. The leadership will be here on this station, focused on the talks. By the time they realize what is happening, it will be over. That assumes the negotiations continue that long. They will, Maya's voice was firm. I will make sure of it. The final day of negotiations arrived. High Counselor entered the meeting room with confidence. His intelligence reports told him that the human fleet had not moved. They were still positioned 3 days from Prime, waiting for orders. The negotiations were going well. The humans seemed ready to accept alliance terms. He did not know that a small task force of human ships had slipped away during the night. He did not know that Commander and his team were already approaching the null zone. He did not know that everything he thought he knew was about to change. Admiral, he said warmly, I trust you have considered our latest proposal. Maya nodded. We have. There are several points we would like to clarify before making a final decision. The clarifications took hours. Maya drew out every discussion, asked questions about every detail, raised objections that required lengthy debate. The delegation grew frustrated, but they could not leave without appearing to abandon the peace process. Meanwhile, in the null zone, the human strike force emerged from hyperspace. His team rode in a stealth shuttle, hidden from sensors by the latest human cloaking technology. Around them, a dozen fast attack ships moved toward the defense platforms. All units commence attack, the task force commander ordered. The battle was brief but intense. The automated platforms had been designed to repel pirates and smugglers, not a coordinated military assault. They fell quickly under concentrated fire. Shuttle slipped through the chaos and approached the stellar converter station. Docking in 30 seconds, the pilot reported. Checked his weapons one final time. His team consisted of 6 operators, each one a veteran of dozens of missions. They had trained for years for operations like this. They were ready. The shuttle locked onto the station's hull. Cutting charges burned through the metal, creating an entrance. Led his team inside. The station was quiet. Emergency lights flickered in the corridors. The few crew members they encountered were quickly subdued. their weapons confiscated and their hands bound. Technical specialist, Lisa Park, guided them toward the weapons control center. "The main interface should be through that door," she said, pointing at a heavy blast door at the end of a long corridor. "Examine the door. It was thick. It was locked. It would take time to break through." Time they might not have. "Set charges," he ordered. "We blow it open." The charges detonated with a thunderous roar. The door buckled, twisted, and fell inward. Beyond it lay the control center. And standing in the center of the room, surrounded by armed guards, was an officer in full battle armor. "I knew you would come," the officer said. "I have been waiting for you." Raised his weapon. "Stand down, this is over." "Is it?" the officer laughed. "You may have reached the control center, but you are too late. The stellar converter is already charging. In 10 minutes, it will fire on the human colony world of Nova Terra. 12 billion souls, Admiral. Are you willing to sacrifice them all?" Felt his blood run cold. Nova Terra was the largest human colony, the birthplace of the rebellion, the heart of everything humanity had built. "You are bluffing." "Am I?" The officer gestured at the displays behind him. They showed the stellar converter powering up, its massive energy collectors drawing power from the dying star. "The order was given hours ago, before you even entered the null zone. High Counselor knew you would try something like this. He prepared accordingly." For a moment felt despair. They had come so far, they had risked so much, and it had all been for nothing. Then he remembered something Maya had said before he left. "Humanity does not give up. We do not surrender. We do not accept defeat. We find another way." He activated his communication link. "Admiral, we have a problem." Back on the negotiation station, Maya received the message through her concealed earpiece. She kept her expression neutral, but inside she was racing through possibilities. The stellar converter was charging. It would fire in less than 10 minutes. 12 billion people would die. Unless she stopped it. She looked across the table at High Counselor. The leader was smiling, a subtle expression that most humans would have missed. He knew. He had planned this all along. "High Counselor," Maya said, her voice calm, "I think it is time we stop playing games." Smile widened. "I do not know what you mean." "Yes, you do," Maya stood. "You never intended to negotiate in good faith. This entire process has been a delay while you prepared to destroy our colonies. You think you have won. You think that we will surrender rather than watch our people die." The smile faded from his face. "You know about the weapon." "I know about the weapon. I know it is charging. And I know you think that gives you leverage." "It gives me victory." Rose to his full height, towering over the human admiral. "Surrender now and I will spare your colonies. Continue this pointless rebellion and I will burn them all, one by one, until humanity is nothing but a memory." Maya met his gaze without flinching. "You made a mistake. You thought you could threaten us into submission. You thought that the fear of death would break us, but you do not understand humanity at all. Enlighten me. We have faced extinction before. Ice ages, plagues, wars that killed millions. Every time we survived, every time we came back stronger. Do you know why? Because you are stubborn fools. Because we do not fight alone." Maya activated her own communication link. "All ships execute Protocol Phoenix." Across the galaxy, the human fleet moved. Not toward Prime, not toward the null zone, toward Alliance worlds, hundreds of them, thousands of targets. Within seconds, alarms were blaring on every Alliance ship and station. Human vessels were appearing everywhere, their weapons charging, their intentions clear. Stared at the tactical display in horror. "What is this?" "This is mutually assured destruction." Maya's voice was hard as diamond. "Your weapon threatens one of our worlds. Our fleet threatens all of yours. If the stellar converter fires, we destroy everything. Your colonies, your entire civilization. You are mad. You would condemn your own people to death. I would condemn both our peoples, unless you stand down. Maya stepped closer to the High Counselor. This is your choice, peace or annihilation, but know this, if we die, you die with us. For a long moment, nothing happened. The fate of two civilizations hung in the balance, suspended on the edge of oblivion. Then raised his hand. Abort the firing sequence, he said quietly. The weapon stands down. In the null zone, watched as the stellar converter's energy readings dropped. The weapon was powering down. The crisis was over. But they were not done yet. Lisa, can you access the self-destruct systems? She was already working. I can do better than that. I can overload the containment fields. The weapon will tear itself apart. Do it. The stellar converter died in a blaze of light, its massive frame consumed by the same energy it had been designed to unleash. The dying star briefly flared brighter, as if celebrating the weapon's destruction, and then returned to its slow decline. Back on the negotiation station, Maya watched absorb the news. The leader seemed to age centuries in a matter of seconds. His shoulders slumped. His hands fell to his sides. The fire in his eyes dimmed. It is over, he said quietly. Yes, Maya felt no triumph, only exhaustion and a faint hope that something good might come from all this bloodshed, but it does not have to end in more destruction. Looked at her. What do you propose? The alliance as it was is finished. It was built on domination, on hierarchy, on fear. That cannot continue, but it can be replaced. Maya took a deep breath. We propose a new alliance. One built on equality, one where every species has an equal voice, one where weapons like the stellar converter are prohibited forever. You would trust us after everything that has happened. Trust is earned. We are offering you a chance to earn it. The negotiations that followed were different from everything that had come before. Humanity did not dictate terms. They did not demand revenge or reparations. They proposed a framework for a new galactic civilization, one where species cooperated rather than competed. They supported the proposal enthusiastically. They had waited eons for this moment, for a younger species to show the way forward. They saw opportunity and signed on quickly. They calculated that the new arrangement offered the best chance for long-term stability and added their agreement. They were more cautious. They demanded guarantees that their collective would be protected. Humanity agreed. The hive minds of Prime deliberated for several days before finally accepting the new terms. They surprised everyone. General, who had surrendered his fortress to Admiral Tors, requested a private meeting with Maya. You defeated me in battle, he said. You had the right to execute me. Instead, you showed mercy. That is not the way, but it is admirable. We are not your enemies, Maya replied. We never wanted to be. I know that now, straightened to his full height. The Confederation will join your new alliance. We will be your warriors as we were warriors for but this time we will fight for something worth fighting for. They took longer to convince. They were proud of their engineering heritage, proud of the ships and weapons they had built. The destruction of the stellar converter wounded them deeply. But in the end, they too saw the wisdom of change. The old alliance had become stagnant. Innovation had slowed. New ideas had been suppressed. Under the new arrangement, they would have the freedom to create without political interference. That was worth more than any weapon. Only they remained uncertain. Had been disgraced. His secret weapon had been destroyed. His threats had been exposed as empty. He was no longer fit to lead. A new High Counselor emerged from the chaos. Her name was, and she was young by standards, barely 400 years old. She had spent her career advocating for reform, for cooperation with younger species, for an end to the policies of domination that had defined the Alliance for. Now she had the chance to make those dreams reality. They accept the terms of the new alliance, she announced. We will not pretend that the transition will be easy. 50,000 years of tradition cannot be erased overnight, but we are willing to try. Maya accepted her hand. That is all we ask. The signing ceremony took place on Earth. It was Maya's idea. She wanted the galaxy to see humanity's, to understand where they had come from and what they had achieved. She wanted the other species to walk on the soil where humanity had been born, to breathe the air that had sustained them for millions of years, to see the monuments they had built and the scars they had healed. Delegates from all 7 species gathered in Geneva, at the old United Nations headquarters that had been preserved as a museum. They walked through halls where human leaders had once debated war and peace. They saw images of human history, the triumphs and the tragedies, the moments of glory and the depths of despair. And they understood. Humanity was not a threat. Humanity was a mirror. They showed the galaxy what was possible when a species refused to give up, refused to accept limits, refused to believe that the stars were beyond their reach. The new Galactic Compact was signed at sunset, as the sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. Representatives from every species added their signatures to the document that would reshape the galaxy. Maya stood at the window, watching the ceremony from a distance. She was tired. The war was over, but the work was just beginning. There would be disputes to settle, compromises to negotiate, old wounds to heal. But there would also be opportunities, trade routes to establish, technologies to share, cultures to exchange, a galaxy of possibilities opening up before them. Appeared beside her, moving silently despite their age. "You have done well, Admiral." Maya shook her head. "We have done well, all of us. This could not have happened without the..." Perhaps, but it was humanity that showed the way. It was humanity that refused to accept injustice. It was humanity that proved that change was possible. The ancient being gazed out at the sunset. "I have lived for billions of years. I have watched countless species rise and fall, but I have never seen anything quite like your people." "Is that a compliment?" Smiled. "It is an observation and a hope." They stood together in silence as darkness fell over the city. 10 years later, Admiral Maya retired. She had spent a decade building the peace she had fought for. She had served on the new Galactic Council. She had overseen the integration of human and alliance technologies. She had watched as old enemies became new friends. Now it was time to rest. Her final public appearance was at the dedication of the memorial, a monument to all those who had given their lives for humanity's freedom. The structure rose high above the plains of Mars, a spire of crystal and light that could be seen from orbit. Millions watched as Maya stepped forward to speak. She was old now, her hair white and her body frail, but her eyes still held the fire that had carried her through wars and negotiations, through triumphs and tragedies. "We gather here to remember," she said, her voice carried across the planet by broadcast systems. "To remember those who came before us, to remember the price they paid for the freedom we enjoy, to remember that nothing worth having comes without sacrifice." She paused, looking out at the sea of faces. 70 years ago, my great-grandmother started a secret project. She called it Phoenix because she believed that humanity would rise from the ashes of oppression to claim its place among the stars. She was right, but she never lived to see it. Maya's voice grew softer. "Admiral James led our fleet against the Alliance when we had barely 1,000 ships. He was 80 years old, and he knew he would not live to see the end of the fight. But he went anyway, because he believed in something greater than himself." She straightened. "We stand here today because of people like them, people who refused to accept limits, people who looked at the impossible and said, 'We will find a way.' People who understood that humanity's greatest strength is not our technology or our weapons, but our refusal to give up." She raised her hand, pointing at the stars beginning to appear in the Martian sky. "Those stars are ours now. not because we conquered them, but because we earned them. We proved that we belonged among the great civilizations of the galaxy. We proved that peace was possible, even after war. We proved that enemies could become friends. Her hand fell to her side. But our journey is not over. It will never be over. There will always be new challenges, new frontiers, new possibilities. And as long as we remember who we are and what we can achieve together, we will face them as we have faced everything else. She smiled. With courage, with determination, with hope. Maya stepped back from the podium. The crowd erupted in applause that echoed across the red plains. That night, she sat alone in her quarters aboard the, now preserved as a museum ship orbiting Mars. She looked out at the stars and thought about everything that had happened. The Alliance was gone. The Compact had taken its place. Humanity was no longer a servant species but an equal partner in galactic civilization. The old wounds were healing, slowly but surely. It was not the future she had imagined as a young officer, angry at the injustices she had witnessed. It was better. There was a knock at her door. "Come in." A young ensign entered, carrying a data pad. "Admiral, I'm sorry to disturb you, but there's a message from Earth. Priority Alpha." Maya took the pad and read the message. Her eyebrows rose. "Well," she said quietly, "that is interesting." "Ma'am, tell the Council I will attend the emergency session and prepare my shuttle." The ensign saluted and left. Maya looked out at the stars one more time. The message had reported something remarkable, signals from beyond the galactic rim, patterns that suggested intelligent origin, first contact with a species no one had ever encountered before. A new challenge, a new frontier, a new possibility. She smiled. Humanity had looked up at the stars and refused to be afraid. That had brought them to the Alliance, through 70 years of oppression, through a war that had nearly destroyed everything, and finally to a peace that could last for eternity. Now the stars were calling again. And humanity, as always, would answer. Maya rose from her chair and headed for the shuttle bay. The journey was not over. It was only beginning.